Today we're going to be comparing C, Golang, JavaScript, Python, Haskell, C#, Coffeescript, Java, and Kotlin by writing a small program to print out these asterisks in a right triangle form. So let's get started. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional in all of these languages. I do work full-time with JavaScript, so if you're expecting perfect idiomatic Haskell or something like that, this isn't for you, but you will get Haskell that works. So with that disclaimer, let's get started. So let's start with C. So we have our int main function, and then we have an array of char because C doesn't have just an outright string that you can declare. So we have to say we want an array of 10 characters, and we're using 10 because this is going to be more than one character. We're going to concatenate other characters to it, and we need this number to be at least 10 in our case. We have our standard for loop and our curly brackets, and inside we have printf. And if you haven't seen C before, interesting thing here is this will be our variable myString. So myString will get plugged into this %s, and we have to create a new line every time, or we won't get individual lines like this. I guess one more interesting note is stringcat. That's to concatenate my current string to this string here, to our new string. So we add one of those every time onto my string. We can't just say my string plus this. Next is Go. So in Go, we also need a main function, and we declare it like this, func main, and our program goes inside of these curly brackets. And we do the same thing. We declare the myString variable, but in this case, we can use this operator here, the colon and equal sign, and that's going to allow us to set this to a string without having to formally declare myString as a string. The compiler will know that that's a string. For loop in Go, notice the lack of parentheses, but similar for loop, just lack of parentheses. We have fmt.println here, and in Go we can print this directly without having to use that formatting % that you saw in C. Also in Go we can add strings to strings, so I think this is a much more simplified version of C, and it just looks cleaner in my opinion. Third is JavaScript. Notice it uses dynamic typing, so we don't need to declare the type of our variable. We just say const or let. In our case, let is the mutable version, and we're going to use let because we need to change this string. We need to concatenate things to it. JavaScript has a standard for loop, just like this. We use console.log to print the variable, myString. And same thing, we can do string concatenation with the plus operator here, same as in Go with the string. So not much new here. We don't need a main function in JavaScript. Fourth is Python, and in Python, to declare a variable, we just put the variable name that we want. We don't need to put let or const or say what type it is. Python knows. So if we hover it, we can see that it's a string. And in Python, we can use single or double quotes to declare a string. It's the same in JavaScript. I forgot to mention that in JavaScript. Notice there's no semicolons in Python. It's all about the indentation. Notice our for loop is also different. So in our for loop, we're going to say for, in our case, underscore or I for index in range of 5. So this is a little bit different how it's written. So for each item in range 5, we want to print my string. And notice concatenation is the same as Go and JavaScript. We say plus equals and our new string. And when we do that, this is our result. Alright, fifth up is Haskell. This one's going to take a little bit more time to explain, but here we go. So in Haskell, we need a main function, and we then call this make triangle function, which we've declared down here. Notice Haskell also has these type signatures above. IO means it's going to do some type of input-output function. In our case, we're going to print to the console. And so this is our function signature here for make triangle. We take in a string, which is here, this string. We need the double quotes for strings in Haskell. We also take an count, in our case an integer, and we're going to return some type of IO. In our case, we're printing. And there is no for loop in Haskell, so what makes this unique is we have to use recursion to get the solution. So if we are doing more than one IO operation in our function here, we need this do, and then we can put what we want to down here. So we put string ln, so we print to the console first our string, which is this. Then we say if the count, which is currently 1, is less than 5, then we want to run our make triangle function again with our string, which is this. but we're concatenating this to it. So we're concatenating this bit to our original string. So we're going to run this function with now this as our string and our count, which was 1 plus 1. Let's move this over just a little bit. Nope, can't. Okay, so count plus 1. So in our case, we now run it with 2. So make triangle with our new string and the number 2. So it runs it again. It puts that to the console, which is here. Is count less than 5? Is 2 less than 5? Yes. So we make a new triangle, or we run the make triangle function again with our current string plus this, which gives us this, and the count, which is 2 plus 1. So now our count is 3. So we run it with this new string and 3. And we keep doing that until we get to 5. And once the count is equal to 5 or greater than 5, we just return the empty tuple, which means we are done with our program. It's just a way to say, hey, we're done. So that's Haskell with recursion. So next is C#. I've kind of highlighted here the actual program part of our program. The rest is important, but it's boilerplate code. So we need a main function, and we need to declare a class, and we need to say using system. So C# has a lot of upfront boilerplate code, but our main program we want to focus on is lines 5 through 9. So in C# there is the string data type, and notice it's different than C, right? In the fact that C we had to declare an array of char. In C# we move beyond that, and we can now just say string. So string my string equals the asterisk, and notice we use the double quotes here. Strings in C# must have double quotes. And then we use our standard for loop. So for int I equals 0. Notice again we're declaring the type here, int I equals 0. Console.writeLine is our way of saying print to the console instead of console.log or println or things we've seen before. So we can print my string straight to the console, and the string concatenation is the same, right, with the plus equals. So not much new here, but there is this boilerplate. Sixth is C#, and the bulk of our program that we want to look at is lines 5 through 9. The rest above and below is boilerplate code that you need for your C# program. So on line 5, notice we have a string. We're declaring string my string, and it's different from C in the fact that we can just say string here. We don't have to say an array of char. We're past that. We can just say string. So string my string equals, and we use double quotes for string in C#, and we use semicolons at the end of lines in C#. For loop, so standard for loop, we use console.writeLine instead of println or console.log or things like that. So console.writeLine prints to the console in C#. And we can just throw the variable right in there. String concatenation is the same, so we can use plus equals. So next is Java, and you're going to notice it's very similar to C#, right? So we have our main and class here, and we have our matching brackets here. So the main part of our program is on lines 3 through 7. We declare a string, my string, and we use the double quotes to say it's a string, right? Not single quotes, but double. We have the same kind of standard for loop. When we print in Java, we have system.out.println, and we can print my string directly to the console, and concatenation works the same with the plus equals. Next is Kotlin, and to use Kotlin we do need a main function, but that's pretty much it, right? So we have our main function, and here's the bulk of our program. In Kotlin we can use var or val. In our case we're going to use var because we want this to be a mutable string. So we say var my string equals with the asterisks, and semicolons we don't need them in Kotlin. We do in a couple places, but not in this case. We have our for loop. Notice our for loop's a little different here. I think this is really nifty how they did this. So for each index in or item in 1 through 5, and we just say 1 through 5 like that. We want to print with a new line, so println, ln's the new line part, print my string, and then we've seen this standard string concatenation. So I guess the big thing for Kotlin here is this for loop is very interesting. Ninth and last is Coffeescript, and in Coffeescript notice we can just say the variable name. We don't need let or const or to declare the data type in front. Very similar to Python in that respect. We can use single quotes or double quotes for the string. The for loop is unique in just we say for I in 1 to 5, no brackets, no curly braces, nothing like that. And then we just indent underneath. And notice if we're using a function, if we're calling a function with an argument, we don't need curly brackets for that either. In a very similar vein to Haskell, we just add a space and put the argument. If there were two arguments, we'd put comma and then second argument there. So that's how arguments work with functions. String concatenation is the same. If you enjoyed the language comparisons, please consider subscribing and clicking that like button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.